Hello. I can see we've got lots of people joining, so I'll go slow through an introduction. But thanks everybody for making time today. Just wanted to have a bit of a chance to have a just sort of discussion and some context setting as to where we are, a chance to sort of say thank you for all the stuff that we've done, a chance to look ahead. And also then just, we've got a lot of people on, and I'll explain who's going to do what, but then a chance to go through what are two really exciting mayoral manifestos and what they mean for us in transport, and then a chance to ask some questions. So I'm really pleased to be joined by Adam Harrison from the Policy, Strategy, and Innovation team, who's going to do some of the detailed stuff on the analysis of the manifestos. We've got Ann Shaw and Michael and Malcolm, who are going to join us at the end for questions as well. So we're going to kick off by going through what's a short slide deck, but please put questions into the chat, and then when we finish, we'll go through them and try to answer as many as we can. Those we don't answer, we'll get some written answers back. So we'll kick off now. So thanks, Ann, Michael, and Malcolm. We'll see you in a minute. Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you. I mean, there are not enough hexagons in the world to populate a slide of all the things that we have done, you know, over the past couple of years. But I mean, everything is there, from rail and metro and innovation and post-pandemic, and the work we've done on bus and cycle hire, and the expansion of Swift and the RTCC, and the redesign of some of our bus stations, and the opening of all sorts of expansions, Pool Meadow, e-scooters, car scrapping schemes. It's really important, actually, to take a really good long look and to say thank you to everybody, because the amount of delivery that we've seen in that first term is absolutely unprecedented. And we have done some tremendous, tremendous things and have done those together. So on to the next slide. Okay, so before we get into Adam taking us through the manifestos, I just thought also it'd be useful just to give a lot of context, because there's so many things happening at this one moment. So, you know, we know that we've got some financial challenges as an organization. We know we've got imminent potential political change. We're dealing still with the impact of COVID and what that means for the region and how we're going to recover. We're working through as an organization what agile working is going to mean, and hybrid working, and how's it going to feel for people to start to think about returning back to the building. We've just started to scratch the surface about a business transformation program, and that work is still bedding in. And any one of those things individually, and we're losing some key members of staff as well, from the chief executive to the monitoring officer and our head of HR. We've got some great new interim people in, but and any one of those changes in and of itself feels like a really big thing. And when you take all those changes together, there's a lot that's happening. But what I really want to be clear about here today is that we've got this. Yeah, I mean, we can do this. There's no links between these things. They're all happening individually. But actually, we've got a big job to do. We have a really exciting next term to prepare for. We've got lots to deliver. So I just wanted to give a little bit of assurance to people that we can handle this, that change is absolutely normal. It's what we're going through. My goodness, we're getting a lot of it at once, but we are on a steady ship, and we've got a lot to look forward to. So I hope that gives everybody just a little bit of assurance, I guess, that the wheels are not coming off in any way, shape, or form. If anything, we're about to double down in the next couple weeks and kick off some really exciting work. So I'm going to hand to Adam now to take us through the manifestos, which is a big chunk of what we wanted to do today, as well as to get ready to answer some questions. So over to you, Adam. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. So morning, everyone. So for those who've just joined, so my name is Adam Harrison. I work in this Policy, Strategy, Innovation Directorate within TfWM. So for those that obviously are aware and not aware, there's a big election next week that will have an impact on us in terms of what we do as an organisation. So I'll just quickly kind of go through the manifestos. So I'll kind of focus on Andy, Street's and Liam's, and the transport pledges and commitments in terms of some really exciting stuff from both in terms of looking at transport system quite differently. Some analysis work that's going on at combined authority level and within TfWM to kind of make sure that we understand what they mean and kind of get us ready. So next slide, please. So yeah, so you probably, like me, I kind of received some formal literature through the post yesterday. So the mayoral election is definitely happening. It happens next week on the 6th, which is next Thursday. Obviously, it was delayed a year from last year. 5 key candidates. So obviously Liam Byrne for Labour, Steve Caldwell, who's a local councillor in Solihull for the Green Party, Peter Donnell for Reform UK, which he was previously a candidate for UKIP. Obviously Andy Street standing again as the incumbent mayor. And the Lib Dem candidate is Jenny Wilkinson. I think he's stood as a prospective candidate for parliamentary seat in Sutton Coldfield. So kind of all local candidates in terms of the local people that are standing. But obviously 2 with incredibly high profiles nationally in terms of Andy's role as the mayor now, but also Liam Byrne's role as an MP for Hertfordshire and quite prominent within the Labour Party at national level. Next slide, please. So obviously, all 5 candidates will probably publish commitments and manifestos, but I think we're being quite prudent that usually the way the elections work in the UK, that it's pretty much 2-party system that is between Conservative and Labour. So I've just focused on those. So obviously this is Andy's manifesto. So his title of his manifesto is "Let's get our region back on track, unleash our potential." But it is very much in the guise of building on his renewal plan for from 2017 that won that election for him. Obviously a very close election that was pretty much neck and neck between him and Sean Tallman, who was the Labour Party candidate. So in terms of transport, he's focused his commitments and pledges on 5 real key areas. So a big one is around doubling spending on the public transport network. So that's bringing about additional investment in. Obviously we've been successful over the last 3 or 4 years around the capital side in terms of building some of the big things that we need to do in terms of metro rail. So he kind of wants to build on that and working with that relationship with government and try and make sure that increases even further. So Andy using his relationship to get additional money from government. The next one is around make massive progress in terms of the ambitious words that are used in terms of his long-term transport plan. So if you've seen any of Andy's kind of Twitter profiles, he uses his big 2040 map. So that's obviously very much focused on a lot of infrastructure in terms of rail, metro, VLR. So that is very ambitious in terms of what he wants to do in terms of completing the programme that we've made big progress in the last 3 years in terms of rail and metro, and then doing some more development works around the big stuff in terms of what would be built kind of the next 3, 5, 10 years. So that's quite exciting, but also quite challenging for us. Important one around deliver clean, safe, quicker buses with lower fares. So this is building on his kind of the bus fare freezes that we've had over the last 4 years, but also kind of rolling out the delivery of kind of the ULEV kind of bus infrastructure. So this is around us kind of delivering the kind of Coventry all electric town city project, and even more getting more money to kind of work with the operators to kind of clean fleets, because obviously that's from a clean air zone and attractiveness of bus is really important. And also kind of the other one is around kind of that urban environment for bus. So we're rebuilding Dudley Interchange, and there's projects like Sutton Coldfield Interchange as well. Another one is obviously a key one is around bold steps around walking and cycling. So this is again taking forward the real big progress that we've made in this area probably in the last 4 years. And then the last one is around his ambitions around driverless vehicles and the innovation program. So this again is building on the future transport zone, 5G, the kind of future mobility, Midlands mobility in terms of the cab test beds, but also the rollout of e-scooters and cycle hire and the DRT service that was launched formally this week in terms of what Coventry. So you can say Andy's is ambitious, it's challenging, but also I would say it's probably a bit more business as usual in terms of what we've been doing in the last 4 years with Andy as mayor, kind of taking that to the next level. So next slide, please. So I'll just quickly go through Liam Byrne's manifesto, which has some kind of similarities with Andy's, but obviously some pretty significant differences. So his manifesto is entitled "A New Future for the Heart of Britain." So Liam is kind of making a big play on, we are the heart of the UK, but also the kind of heart of the UK green manufacturing industrial base, and that's really important for him. So he's again kind of focused on 5 really big areas. I think they kind of make our green future is probably one of the biggest ones that are more applicable to us. So, but I'll pick that up in a minute. But I think a big one is around what he's calling getting our fair share. So Liam has set a really ambitious target around net zero carbon. So at the minute, the UK figure is 2050. The Command Authority figure is 2041. But he wants to bring that forward, and he wants to kind of rebase the budget and some of the investment programs to make sure that that is the main focus of the Command Authority structure and TfWM. So that's quite challenging, but obviously that is kind of aligned with some of the government thinking about big things that need to be done around tackling the climate emergency and carbon emissions. So obviously the next one is around make a green future. So this is very much the whole transport kind of system and improvements, both revenue and capital, is to meet that 2030 target. So making the West Midlands the UK's first net zero carbon city region. He wants to achieve this by kind of potentially tinkering with structures in terms of how things work within the CA. So that is again bringing some things together, what he's calling GRETA, in terms of green energy, housing, transport. So we're not quite sure what that would mean, but that is a closer alignment of transport, energy and housing working together. I mean, from our perspective, that's kind of happening already. Those things are inherently interlinked in terms of things going forward. He wants to kind of accelerate transport projects, so bring some of the things that we more long-term forward to kind of a project speed type of approach, try and remove some of the barriers around delivering projects. He wants to see a kind of acceleration on Swift and an acceleration of a kind of daily fare cap for journeys. So that's building on Swift, but being slightly more ambitious. So that's making sure that people who need to use the bus or public transport can use it at kind of most affordable way. And obviously that's more of an economic thing in terms of bouncing back from COVID. He wants to kind of see that acceleration of a very light rail project in Coventry and to see where subject to kind of be improved as a technology to be spread out across the West Midlands. As I mentioned, again, he wants to around freezing fares and reducing the cost of travel, which is a big one for him. And also another one on bus, a big one on bus is around that kind of, taking forward some of the cross-city bus type activity that we're already doing. So that kind of the stuff that Pete Bond's team and others are doing in terms of those projects, but he wants to see that spread out a bit more and brought forward quicker. And then again, I think there's, so on the right hand side around the green future, I think there's a lot of synergies in terms of what he wants to do with Andy, Andy's around active travel and accelerating the kind of network of electric and green buses. I'll just quickly focus on the kind of back our young people. So I think this is quite important. So the 16 to 18 kind of age group, he's as politically wants to kind of back that age group. He feels that's been really hard hit by the pandemic, and it's a really important age group going forward. So he wants to see an offer for reduced or free travel for those age groups. So that could be half price travel, free bus travel at the weekends or evenings, and then that's linked with the kind of opportunity pass for linking Swift with travel, culture, sport. So this is part of a wider offer around making sure that we support younger people. And I think this is a kind of pandemic response in terms of that group, and probably the 19 to 25 group have been hit really hard economically in terms of the pandemic. And then the last bit is around kind of supporting stronger, safer communities, and that is around ensuring that the transport network is safe for people, and that's around walking, cycling, but also road safety. So that's a quick, really quick overview of the manifesto. So Lisa, if you can go on to the next slide, please. I'll just quickly touch on some of the analysis work that we're doing. I know this sounds probably slightly a bit boring, but it's really important in terms of how we understand what it means for us. as an organisation. So we kind of factoring it over a kind of 100-day period, a 1-year period, and then over the 3 years of the manifesto of whoever wins term. So I think both manifestos, Laura said, are really exciting, but I think they're both really challenging, and that's probably factored around accelerating the pace of delivery, future plans, but also potential some policy changes. So some of those ticketing and concession things do rely on policy changes and do have some financial implications about how we would do that and how we would fund it. There's a lot of internal work going on in terms of the combined authority. So it's got a policy working group which we're represented on through me and others in our team. So we've undertook some high-level analysis of both of those manifestos to try and work out what it means and what we need to do in response to that from the kind of 7th of May. Potentially it will be the 10th of May, which is next Monday, because we don't know how quick they'll count the electoral votes, depending on COVID, because obviously it's the safety issues around that being inside. So the combined authority is producing a 100-day plan for whoever wins. So this kind of would demonstrate as a formal document around demonstrating the commitments and momentum against those key pledges. So giving an understanding that we've read the manifesto, we understand it, and we're there to help fulfill their plans. And this 100-day plan is kind of informed some kind of detailed analysis that we're doing as TfWM to kind of inform our work programs, because I think there is a sort of difference between some of the things that TfWM does, is that we probably have more statutory functions than a lot of the CA. So obviously that's some of the things that we need to kind of make sure that we get full understanding of. Next slide, please. And then I'll just conclude on this slide really. So some of that probably does look really challenging. It might look concerning when you talk about structures and change. No one really likes change. We've all been in a year where there's been a lot of change going on, and it can be quite unnerving. But I think the key thing to take out is whoever wins, there's still a lot going on and we still need to deliver, and that won't change. So that kind of big stuff that we're doing, that real ambitions programs around delivery, the infrastructure side, but even some of the things that we do in terms of the normal really important stuff, shelters and services and information and customer services won't change. That will still be there. So I'll finish on that. Happy to take any questions.
That's great. Thanks, Adam. And it's nice to have this slide up. I think the other thing that's that I was thinking about as you took us through a little bit of that analysis was actually it's a fairly good ringing endorsement of what we've been doing over the past few years. So what we don't have in any of those manifestos is anything that unpicks or undoes the work that we've been doing. We've been focused on walking and cycling. We've been focused on bus priority and bus routes. We've been focused on big capital projects. We've been focused on developing SWIFT. In one of the manifestos, they were talking about making the environment better. We've been working hard on a lot of our bus stations to try to improve the environment, give people the information that they need, and understanding in a whole new way how the whole operations of the widest network works and how we use technology to help drive that. Our innovation agendas in there. So it's actually really comforting to me to go through that in some detail, because it's ambitious. There's no two ways about it. Both of them are ambitious, and that's a great thing, because nothing would be worse than a manifesto that wasn't ambitious around transport. But it just also gives me a lot of comfort to know that what we've been working on has been meaningful, and that both candidates want to see us build from it. So thanks for that. Lisa, is it possible to bring all the colleagues back up on the top, and then actually what we'd like to do is just spend the last 10 minutes taking questions, because there's a lot that's in there, and there's a lot of stuff I'm sure that people want to ask. Especially we have the expertise of Adam on the line, who's done such a detailed analysis of both manifestos. So by all means, we've got use the webinar, GoToWebinar, to put questions in. And I don't see any coming up yet, and there can't be none. So I will ask Adam a question if that is helpful to kick it off, which is this idea of bringing energy and housing and transport into a single delivery unit. you know, as you said, a lot of that is ways of working that we already do across the combined authority. But what do you think some of the advantages of that might be?
Well, I think with some of the kind of big issues around climate, I think that's just a logical thing about, you know, in terms of the switch to kind of electrification of the transport system. Think about EVs and even bus. I think it makes logical sense in terms of that delivery unit. I think that, so if you think about some of the work that within our directorate that kind of Andy Page and others have been doing with energy capital, and then Gareth's team, so kind of, you know, future planning about where housing go, what energy requirements those need, where charging needs to be for, you know, we're delivering the Coventry electric town bus thing. So it does make logical sense that kind of to bring that within a unit. I mean, Mike, I don't know if you want to come in on that in terms of our wider directorate working.
Yeah, I mean, it's the challenges that we're trying to address in transport are what we've always been doing, enabling people to get around cleanly and safely, but also to address this wider climate change and inclusion challenge that society as a whole has got. And fundamentally, more than ever, it's always been the case that transport is, to an extent, a drive demand and enables other things to happen. But more than ever, to address those challenges, we have to deliver things in true partnership with the digital agenda and with the energy agenda and land use. And that the level of challenge that the CA has adopted now and acknowledged just requires that closer and closer everyday working, and doesn't really, that's what we'd be doing anyway. I'm less concerned about whatever the badge or the framework is put over the top of it. Working closely is what we are doing and will continue to do and need to do more of, and that won't change under either mayor.
Absolutely. So we've got a hand up, but there's a question in that came in the chat first, so I'll pick that up, which is how quickly can we expect things to change if there is a new mayor? And I'm happy to take that. I think quite quickly. You know, I think they've both had an extra year to think about what it is that they want to do if they are successful, and I think they've both got an idea of how they want to do that over the next 3 years. 3 years is not a long time, as we learned. I can't believe how quickly the first 4 went by. So in terms of like any sort of structural change, like Mike said, we don't know what the structure ultimately would need to be, but those things take time. We've got to, you know, we need to build consensus across partners. We've got a constitution. So, you know, the organization won't necessarily feel different on day one, but I think being able to respond on day one to, we understand what you're saying, and this is how we're going to deliver it, and that setting and framing our focus for delivery, that starts on day one. Will it feel like a different organization? No, but we will be being really bold and ambitious and clear about saying this is now, we have a manifesto, this is where it's taking us, this is how it's shaping our priorities, this is how we're going to react to that. And I think we're sort of ready to do that. So I hope that answers your question, Sarah. And then I think, did somebody say Michael Weevil's hand's up? Can we open the mic for Mike?
Yeah, so can I ask then, Adam, whether there was anything in the manifestos? Birmingham's Clean Air Zone comes in on the 1st of June. Is there anything in the manifestos regarding the strengthening of Birmingham's Clean Air Zone, or perhaps something similar in some of the other areas?
Yeah, so I think this is where it's a really interesting one, because obviously clean air and air quality kind of sits within TfWM, but sits again, you know, it's a wider thing about the environment. So I would say Andy is supportive of clean air zones, but I'm not to say he's supportive of the charging element within, because obviously that's, you know, a political point. But I think Liam would be, I think if you read some of the detail, would be quite keen to see kind of expansion of those kind of measures across the West Midlands. But you know, those type of things need to be done really closely with the authorities. I think that's kind of the key thing that part of our job in terms of if he wins or Andy wins, about, you know, that's that consensus around those things are very, very close to the authorities in terms of their responsibility. So yeah, I would suspect you might see a bit more of that if Liam was to win. I think the environment is really important to him, and it links with his kind of, the kind of green manufacturing, the kind of zero carbon. I think they are separate things, but they are interlinked.
That's great. Any questions, please? We do have a number of experts here on the line. So if there are questions, and I don't know, I can't see any more in the chat. Is anybody's hand up, Lisa? I am sorry. Stephen Holloway?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, just a quick question. Are both the manifestos fully costed, and do we think they're realistic?
Just the easy question. Thanks for that, Steve. I think so. I think that's part of the thing. They have how the process has worked is so those teams who kind of represent the candidates have access to kind of certain documents, so they can ask us questions. So we've given some factual information about what we think in terms of some of those costings, but obviously we've heavily caveated some things. So a good example is around extra concessions for younger people. We've given some broad costings of what we think it might be, but we heavily caveated that at the minute there is no additional resources, so there has to be some plan when you start to kind of get some additional resources, or is it a change into, so that's where it could be quite complicated. So I would say both are probably not fully costed, and I think you could argue, depending on how you analyze it, both are, whether either are realistic, it's slightly subjective, but yeah, that's the kind of that'll be the interesting bit when it starts from the kind of 10th of May, going through that. So there is a thing that someone says in manifesto we might not actually be able to do, or things change, so depending on what we're allowed to do and what money exists.
Worth adding really into that is clearly we're looking at a relatively short mayoral term, whatever the mayor, that the manifestos both reflect much longer term strategic aspirations as well. And what we are coming up to is actually a really good opportunity. We've got a huge amount going on as an organisation with delivery now, but we are over the next 12 months going to be negotiating with government, with the new mayor, some amazing additional investment, hopefully, into the region. The intracity transport settlement should see a slice of £4.2 billion coming to the West Midlands, and a good slice of that. The national bus strategy is one of the most ambitious documents we've actually seen coming out of central government for a little while, in terms of what that says about the relationship of bus with the highway authorities, with the use of the key route network and how that should be structured. That has funding attached to it, both revenue and capital. And so collectively between these initiatives, there will be significant investment going in towards delivering change in the transport system. We don't quite know what the shape of that is yet, and that is one of the big missions over the next 6, 9, 12 months, is to button that down with the detail, agree those programs with the local authorities, and do that as part of a completely refreshed statutory transport plan, which addresses these big challenges. So, I mean, one message is absolutely, we've done a lot, we're doing a huge amount of great work, but there's an awful lot more still to define and put on the agenda that can be funded and delivered over the next few years. It'll be slightly different stuff, but we're still going to be here delivering really good stuff and change for the region.
I've got a number of questions that have just sort of all come through at once, so we'll try to get through them as quickly as we can. But a question probably here for Anne, saying, I don't think I heard anything about the Commonwealth Games. Any views or anything different that anybody wanted to see as a part of the Games in any of the manifestos?
Well, definitely in terms of what was in the manifestos, I think the Commonwealth Games was mentioned, but briefly, I think these are longer term ambitions, as Mike's just said. Absolutely, a successful delivery of the Commonwealth Games and Transport for West Midlands part in delivering that is something that we know will be on the minds of whoever is the mayor in the next term as well. So all of those commitments are still things that we need to do and to deliver. And we've got a great team here who's sort of working across with Birmingham City Council, with the organising committee, etc. But for sure, the spotlight will be on the Commonwealth Games as sort of one of the big events that happens in the West Midlands as well. And also, not just the Commonwealth Games, our support for the City of Culture as that starts to bring momentum next year as well. So we'll see some of those events starting and kicking off in May, June this year. And as the year goes on and the COVID restrictions start to ease even further, we'll see those events getting bigger and bigger as well. And we're also supporting Coventry City Council as part of that as well. And that will be something, again, with a spotlight on that both whoever is the mayor will want to make sure is successful, and we play our part in that as well.
The next question is one, Adam, that's probably quite quick one, but do any of the manifestos discuss transport for logistics? So not people focused. Is there anything in there about robot supply chains or using connected and I think that must be connected vehicles, autonomous connected vehicles?
Yeah, go on then, Mike.
Yeah. Andy's made some quite clear statements around ambition with technology and autonomy, and that works well with what TfWM's been delivering. I think it's fair to say on the freight logistics side, both the freight industry and ourselves have been struggling to get that on the political radar as much as it deserves to be. And that's as much at the national level as it is at any regional or local level. We do have proposals that are being developed, which will be put before the new mayor and considered as part of this new programme coming forward, because it is an important aspect of decarbonising the transport system and supporting the economy.
Right. I'm just conscious of time. We've got a bunch of questions that are unanswered, which I'm just going to suggest if we can take those away and then put a written response, which we can send round, if that would be helpful to do that. But I think just to give some assurance, I don't think there's a question specifically about Metro and where is Metro on their agenda. I think they both have that quite high up on their agenda. There's some questions about ring and ride services being affected. Again, there's nothing in either manifesto that would make me think that they don't want to continue to invest and develop but to try to change the provision of how we do ring and ride to make it what passengers need. There's a lot of really interesting questions about how we match our ambition with the mayoral ambition. And we have to remember too that a mayor is a chair of a combined authority. So it's all of us. It's our local authority partners. It's us alongside a mayor that need to drive and shape that. But clearly the work on the transport plan that Mike's team is leading is where some of that will embed. And then some good questions about managing expectations. That is just part and parcel of the job that we have now and how we work with the mayor. We expect manifestos to be big and bold. And the reality on the ground is some of the things are difficult and challenging and costly, and not everything is lined up perfectly to start to kick those off on day one. So, how we work through, what is the art of the possible? How would we prioritize this? That's part of what Adam's been working on with this, with the more detailed transport plan. And I'm sure that when we finish that work, which will be done ready for whomever is elected and announced over the weekend, we'll be able to share that with teams. Can I just say thank you to everybody for joining and for the questions. We'll try to come back around to the ones that weren't answered. And it's really good, and this is a really important conversation. And as I would say, Adam will be really happy to take your calls if you have any questions or detail. But please do.
Absolutely.
There you go. If you want to have a more detailed conversation with any of us about what's in here, or you've got really specific questions or nervousness about what it means for you, you can contact any of us by email or phone, and we're really happy to walk through it. The question I had is, when are we going to know? And I think it sounds like Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it's a bit up in the air in terms of counting. So yeah, I don't think it might not be Friday like it usually would be. So yeah, I think it'll probably be a bit slower this year in terms of the count.
And obviously, I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of communications when we know where we are. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great Friday and a nice weekend. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but like I said, we'll take them offline and come back and answer them individually as well.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Take care.
Bye.